Namaskar, I am Biju Dharmapalan and you are watching Science Time, a show that brings you the latest developments from the world of science and technology. Let's first look at some of the exciting stories. A lab-grown meat startup gets the FDA's stamp of approval. Artificial sweeteners found in sugar-free foods can kill antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Spin correlation between paired electrons demonstrated. Now let's see the news in detail. The US Food and Drug Administration or FDA for the first time cleared a meat product grown from animal cells for human consumption. Upside Foods, a company that makes cell-cultured chicken by harvesting cells from live animals and using the cells to grow meat in stainless steel tanks, will be able to bring its products to market once it has been inspected by the US Department of Agriculture or USDA, according to a release from the FDA. A positive response from the FDA has long been seen as the next major milestone for the cultivated meat industry. In the past few years, startups in the space have built small-scale production facilities and raised billions of dollars in venture capital funding, but haven't been able to sell their products to the public. Until now, the small number of people invited to try cultivated meat have had to sign waivers acknowledging that the products are still experimental. Cultivated meat is different from plant-based meats because it contains real animal cells and is theoretically indistinguishable from real meat itself. Cells are initially isolated from an animal and developed into cell lines that are then frozen. Small samples from these cell lines can then be transferred to bioreactors, usually large steel tanks, where the cells are fed growth media containing the nutrients that cells need to divide. Once the cells have grown and differentiated into the correct kind of tissue, they can be harvested and used in cultivated meat products. Now let's move to the next story. The key to beating antibiotic-resistant bacteria could have been hiding on our supermarket shelves. 3 artificial sweeteners that are commonly used in diet drinks, yogurts, and desserts can dramatically halt the growth of multi-drug resistant bacteria, according to a study carried out at Brunel University, London. The bacteria Acinetobacter baumannii, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, that cause pneumonia and sepsis, and these are on the World Health Organization's list of priority pathogens that urgently need new antibiotic treatments thanks to the deadly threat they pose to those with compromised immune systems. The sweeteners saccharin, cyclamate, and acesulfame K tested by the team were found to inhibit the growth of bacteria, with acesulfame K being particularly effective in preventing the bacteria from developing biofilms that protect them from antibiotics. All 3 were also found to reduce the bacteria's resistance to common antibiotics, meaning fewer are needed for effective treatment. Antibiotic resistance arises thanks to bacteria's ability to adapt in response to drugs. It occurs naturally, but over-prescribing drugs in humans and misuse in animals is accelerating the process. It is currently considered to be one of the biggest threats to global health and food security by WHO. Now let's move to the story number 3. Physicists at the University of Basel have experimentally demonstrated for the first time that there is a negative correlation between the two spins of an entangled pair of electrons from a superconductor. For their study, the researchers used spin filters made of nanomagnets and quantum dots as they report in the scientific journal Nature. The entanglement between two particles is among those phenomena in quantum physics that are hard to reconcile with everyday experiences. If entangled, certain properties of the two particles are closely linked even when far apart. Albert Einstein described entanglement as a spooky action at a distance. Research on entanglement between light particles or the photons was awarded this year's Nobel Prize in Physics. Two electrons can be entangled as well, for example, in their spins. In a superconductor, the electrons form so-called Cooper pairs responsible for the lossless electrical currents in which the individual spins are entangled. For several years, researchers at the Swiss Nanoscience Institute and the Department of Physics at the University of Basel have been able to extract electron pairs from a superconductor and spatially separate the two electrons. This is achieved by means of two quantum dots, nano-electronic structures connected in parallel, each of which only allows single electrons to pass. The research is considered as an important step towards further experimental investigations of quantum mechanical phenomena such as the entanglement of the particles in solids, which is also a key component of quantum computers. Now let's move to Science Quest segment. The question for this week's Science Quest is, how is a fog formed? Fog is a cloud that touches the ground. Fog can be thin or thick, meaning people have difficulties seeing through it. In some conditions, fog can be so thick that it makes it hard to drive safely because it obscures the road and other cars. Fog shows up when water vapor or water in its gaseous form condenses. During condensation, molecules of water vapor combine to make tiny liquid water droplets that hang in the air. You can see fog because of these tiny water droplets. Water vapor, a gas, is invisible. Fog happens when it is very, very humid. There has to be a lot of water vapor in the air for fog to form. In order for the fog to form, dust or some kind of air pollution needs to be there in the air. Water vapor condenses around these microscopic solid particles. Sea fog, which shows up near bodies of salty water, is formed as water vapor condenses around bits of salt. Depending on the humidity and temperature, fog can form very suddenly and then disappear just as quickly. This is called a flash fog. Fog is not the same thing as mist. Fog is denser than mist. This means fog is more massive and thicker than mist. There are more water molecules in the same amount of space in a fog. Fog cuts visibility down to 1 kilometer, meaning it will prevent you from seeing further away than 1 kilometer from where you are standing. Mist can reduce visibility to between 1 and 2 kilometers. With this, we come to the end of this edition of Science Time. Keep sending your feedback and suggestions through email. Our email ID is indiascience@vigyanprasar.gov.in. We will be back with more exciting stories from the world of science next week. Stay tuned to India Science.